What is up, everyone? Welcome to Max on Deck. Today we have runner of the newsletter from TypeBeast, Mr. Starstone. How you doing?
Doing well. How are y'all?
Doing well. Doing well.
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's been a day, but not too bad.
Always the day.
Every day's a day.
I'd say it's been a day, but I've been asleep for most of it. So
At work, we're saying that there's only 3 days nowadays. It's like yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and that's about it.
Yep. Every day, yeah. In Papaya, pretty much every day is the same day, I will say. Today I had to pick up my dog's ashes today. That was an event that brought back a lot of unsettling feelings. So just midday was a bit rough, but you guys also, but I'll continue to say this: the support from this community for something completely non-keyboard related. I got an extremely nice message from Minterly today after she complained about Zykos. So, but thank you guys again. So for the guys that do not know Starstone, he has probably affected your keyboard journey in one way or another, a very long time member. We've actually met in person, got to have a lot of good conversations at the NorCal meetup last year in San Jose. And he, like we said, he runs the TypeBeast newsletter. If you have not gotten a chance to check that out, you can do !guest. I've put the link in there as well as our sponsors link. It's an amazing read, and well done on that, by the way.
I try my best. It's one of those things. It's like it's very hard to just pick out the things that I want to write about just because there's so much about it. I also didn't want to like replicate what other people are doing. Like I don't want to do in-depth dives of certain ICs because that's what Top Collect does on their video show and their news wrap up every single week. So I wanted to carve a niche for myself in the sense that it's very reflective of the website called like Uncrate or Acquire, or to a bigger extent Hypebeast. It's basically just picking out things that are like big in the community or big that is coming up and just showcasing that to either newcomers or people that have been around in the community for a long time and don't have the time to just sit on GeekHack or Reddit or even on Discord all day.
Well, it's really cool too because it gives you I think the underrated factor of it is that it is an opinionative take on what's happening in the community, which I think is needed. I think seeing someone's opinions and not just like yeah, this is okay. I think it's good to have that in the community of not like, here's all the information, here's everything, but having like, here's information and here's what I think about it is really healthy for the community so that people can maybe open up in different ways to different things, or maybe there's some people that vibe exactly with you and now they're avid followers of the newsletter. So
yeah, I think so that it resonated a lot with newer members just because they're not accustomed to being on GeekHack or all these things that we've done for the past 2-3 years, and the community, the hobby itself is moving to different things. Like people that hang around on Discord, there's like the same 50, maybe 200 people, right? We all kind of know each other. We all kind of talk to each other, but GeekHack, RMK just hit 600,000 people. I was talking to Melodica, and her newsletter, the Cute Keyboard Club, has hit 1,000 members. And it's just showcasing that, while people that are very avid and very like enthusiasts of the hobby don't make up the entire hobby.
Yeah, it's and the other thing, we preach preference like constantly. We like to that was a good in sync sip, by the way, guys. Well done.
thanks.
But we preach preference. We say, please do your best to make your own decisions about things. But sometimes people don't want that. Sometimes people want to go, hey, you know more than me. You tell me what you think is good. And I think there is some room for that. I know that like Nathan Kim said that creams are the best gaming switches. While some people might not agree with that statement, the other thing that did is Nathan Kim made a statement. It sold a lot of creams. That's great for vendors. But what that also did is it put, in my opinion, good switches in people's hands before other switches potentially. I know a lot of people that when they get started, they go, myself included, Osiris, we all kind of we bought these more inexpensive things and then wound up just upgrading everything later.
Yeah, the same thing with me. Like I remember getting Kale Coppers off Mass Drops because I didn't know any better.
Yep, and like Najio said, you can get the full experience of a Switch right off of a Switch tester, so it's perfect. But no, it's great. I tell people often, like, hey, Holy Pandas are obtainable right now. You can and if you want this like super tactile experience that sounds really, really good, Holy Pandas are a great option. Inks, if you like linears, inks and creams. If you can find creams, inks are a little bit, I didn't think I'd be saying this like 7 months ago, but inks are a lot easier to find than creams nowadays. But these are like top tier switches that are obtainable that are not $1.50 a switch.
Even now that Holy Pandas are so widely available, there is a desire for the next Holy Panda. There at one point it was T1s. I remember the first sellout. I remember I woke up early one day and there was on KBD fans, and then all of a sudden they were sold out and people wanted them. I mean, a couple of days ago, I remember talking to somebody in Asia, and they're like, "You should try these Moyu switches." And I was like, "What is a Moyu switch?" And it's basically their version of a Holy Panda. Like I have some on the way from Taobao. It's just weird how this is happening. I just read that there was this new company, SP Star, that teamed up with Leopold that is also doing their own tactile switch. It's like there's constant iterations on the switches that are not only new to the community, but also are region specific. And the sad thing about this hobby currently is that it's very centered for the U.S. market, U.S. and European market, and we sometimes disregard what's happening in the Japanese market or what's happening in mainland China, which is completely different from what is happening here.
Yeah, they're like on a completely different space than us. I know. I remember. I can't remember where I was reading. I think it might have been on Reddit or something, but it was people talking about like the things that like China are into and even Korea as well are like in completely opposite ends of the spectrum as the American and European markets are.
Yeah, it's crazy. Fortunately I've been able to see a little bit of the Chinese and Japanese market, but like Korean is very walled. It's very guarded and very kept because you have to be a Korean citizen to get into that. I think the most visibility we've been able to see through is because of Soyolite on the Top Click server. He's like our proxy, and he kind of like mentions when there's going to be lint sales or whatnot, and then that's great. But I would hope that the Korean market to be more open with the rest of the hobby. I think that one way that I was describing someone that's not in the hobbies is that RMK and keyboards is more of a like car culture. And even within culture, there are subcultures. Like there are people that just like hot rods, and there's some people that just like JDMs, and people that like American muscle. And then you go deep, and within those deep subcultures, you can create a community. But like there is no one big keyboard community right now because it's so sporadic, depending on what they want.
Yeah, and that's good for some. That's good to have these differing. I mean, you look at the American community, very split between linears and tactiles. Exactly. There are people like Heinebush. He will refuse to ever put a tactile switch on his board. He is a linear guy now. He's talked about I changed my linears and all that stuff, but you have that split of these people that were like, oh, just in the hobby itself, there are people that are very, I used to be like tactiles only, no linears. I enjoy linears now. And I know Cyrus is starting to, he's spending too much time with Quakeums, in my opinion.
Is that what's changing my opinions on the...
That's what's doing it. Yeah, it's Quakeums and made the Holy Panda and then was like, no, I got to get away from this. Go all linear. So But speaking of switches, what we usually do to start off, as I'm sure you've seen before, is the Fast Four. And I'm very excited because you have quite the experience with all different types of switches and boards and all that stuff. So, starting off, top 4 favorite switches.
These switches that I've personally tried or that I own.
I guess both. I mean, just
Yeah, all of the above.
All of the above. Okay, so my favorite Alps is a Salmon Alps. Like I have an old Apple AEK that I'm waiting for the Lunar 2 to come out so I can harvest the switches. Because I want a modern Alps board, and that's the only one the only way I can get one. I like black inks. I put them in on a series once to break them in, and then I've never taken them out. They're just there. They're on lube factory. Smoothest switch I have. This is gonna sound like I'm sucking up, but it's true. I like the Psychos. I remember we were at NorCal. You're like, hey, this is the closest you could get to a brown Alps on an MX format switch. And I was like, yeah, this is what it is. And I like it.
I had a lot of dirty looks though when I would say that. I'm like, this is the closest. And you're like, yeah, fucking okay. Like, and even IMU or you was like, okay, let's see about that. And he was like, God damn it.
The best was when Nathan went to go try them, and he was like, he had like kind of like the okay, and then he tried them, and he was like, oh, I see.
I see what you did there.
And then last but not least, Starstones. I like my Switch. You know, there's a reason that I went through the entire trouble of getting blue inks before everyone else. Nice. But I do have an honorable mention. Mod M's, tactiles. They're very underrated. They're still around, but I think that it's a very good. It's good for people that want a Zeal V1 type feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it was. You threw us a curveball. I remember. So we recently built a keyboard on our 24-hour stream, and the AL1, very similar. What's the duck? I forgot the name of the black. Is it
Blackbird?
Yeah, Blackbird. Yeah. So it's dark blackboard, basically a F-rowless compact 1800 layout. Very awesome board. And I got the switches in, and I was like, "Whoa, mod M's!" It was like blast from the past. All right. And I remember telling Cyrus, I was like, "Dude, this guy's got mod M's," and he was like, "Really?"
it's just a Switch that was like really hype for a while, like before the Panda craze and before Zeal V2s came out. It was pretty hype for a little bit, and then like box switches got big, and then Zeal V2s happened, and the Pandas happened, and then it just kind of got. I feel like the mod switches kind of got forgotten about because they are a little bit expensive, but I think the price has come down a little bit. They're not quite as expensive as they.
Around 70 cents a switch, which isn't bad considering, you know, pandas are $1 or 85 cents. But, you know, it's still something that, like, it's also from a vendor that is originative and which is in the community, but not really. They kind of just do their own thing.
They're like a silent member. They just kind of like, they don't do interest checks. It's like sets just pop up on their site, and you're just like,
here's some sets.
okay.
Also, Hyperfuse. Here's the 9th iteration of Hyperfuse.
True. Like, I will say that I got onto their like latest round of Honeywell, and I'm eagerly awaiting that set.
Yeah, they'll randomly just put stuff up. Like I think they had like some Norba Force boards or some,
Yeah,
and like they would be like, yeah, don't ask us where we got these, but we have them. Just like
kind of weird things. Like, did this just fall out of the back of a truck, or did you buy them? The manufacturer have just B stock or C stocks laying around? It was just very weird.
yeah. But speaking of boards, you have quite a few boards. Some of our favorite boards from the NorCal meetup were in fact yours. But I did want to ask, what are your personal top 4 boards?
Hard. That's hard. That's like asking a parent what's their favorite child.
Easy. It's always the first one.
Ah. All right. So my first custom board was an M65. So that will always have a very like special part in my heart, and I don't think I will ever give it away or sell it. The nylon bottom is also something that hasn't really been done ever since. So I think that that's going to stay. I'm actually right now typing on a cipher. Uh, so I like that. I was fortunate to be around Max's server at the time that he was selling them, and I just was like, I would like a B stock because I was a nobody. So I was like, I'm just gonna take the B stock because I don't want to like impose on anyone else. The Sirius, I like the Palm Sirius. I like that I have a board that I can just throw around and not care if it get like all my boards. I don't really, I I use them. So if they get dinged, if they get scratched, then it's okay because it's a tool, and I want a tool to be used because if it's not being used and it's just you know in the in a shelf somewhere and not being used, then it's just a trophy and it's not something I want. It's not something that's being used, so it's not something that I would prefer keeping. So yeah, I think that it's a very good daily board and travel board.
As shown by Mr. Petrov, who took his around the world.
Yeah, that's right. So my first, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I love your cipher. Like your cipher specifically. Like there are certain boards that I've tried that I'm like, I love that board. And one of them sadly does. Well, one of them probably still exists, but yours I'm sure does. And I'm literally even in the NorCal video. I think it's Nathan's or I think it's Mech Merlin's video. He was like, "What was your favorite board?" And I was like, "The cipher." The cipher with GM. Yeah, I think it had 9s on it at the time.
It has Oblivion.
Yeah, I think it had Oblivion on it still. Then
It was
Oblivion
okay. I remember typing on and being like, this fucking thing. I wish I had this so much.
And then I think that my last favorite board would probably be the first gasket board that I got, and that was the Kepler. It was like the first like full gasket board that was like very premium. I was fortunate to have a contact with 159, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to do this. It's a proto. If things get fucked up, things get fucked up." And I was like, "All right, yeah, we can do this." Then yeah.
So,
Honorable mentions though would be the J01, but it's not there because it's in ISO only currently, so I don't daily it.
Osiris has a funny story about your Kepler specifically.
What about my Kepler?
Do you not remember? I remember this. I
know.
literally,
Picking
we
it
walked over to your table, and Osiris is like, "Dude, where's Starstone?" I'm like, I don't know. There's like 80 people here, and it takes me 5 minutes to walk across the room. And he was like, I want to pick it up.
Yeah, because it had a sign that said "Don't pick it up."
All around the place trying to find you.
And then I was like, just pick it up. It's fine.
Well, because I was like, I was like, I don't want to pick it up and you not be there, and then someone else be like, oh, I can just disregard the sign that says please don't pick up and just pick it up as well. So that's why I was like, oh, let me go find him and ask him. Pick it up, and that thing is freaking heavy. But surprisingly enough, the J01 that was sitting right next to it was just about as heavy and is
almost, yeah. Another thing that I want to mention is like I like Topra. I love Topra. I have an F660C, and it's amazing. I changed out the domes for BKE lights, and it's amazing. I have a heavy 6 like case on it. I just wish there was an actual real custom Topra, like PCB domes, springs, case, like. And I'm very excited of what Gondo's doing because he's trying to do it.
Gondo's a smart guy. He does a lot for the community. Everything that he does too is like open source, which is pretty crazy. Most people would be like, "Nah, I want to keep my stuff for me." Gondo's just like, "Yep, yeah. Here, have it."
Go for it. Knock yourself out. So next up, I almost want to like write down what I think yours are going to be, or at least the overall theme. But your top 4 favorite keycap sets.
This is a hard one because there's so many.
Right. They do not have to have shipped yet.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So just to make it even more difficult for you.
This might seem like a curveball, but it's SA Abyss, just because I normally don't buy a lot of SA sets. Like it's too tall, but it's like the first set that I bought with my M65. And it's just like makes a complete set. It's something that I've you kind of cherish the first thing you get in the community. I like Space Cadet because it does remind me of like the cadet like Lisp terminals, and it has like the math sublegends. I don't like Weave sublegends. I don't like any other sublegends, but the math sublegends kind of like pull it together. I like MDA plastic. Like it had that like off-white kind of hype beast kind of look and aesthetic to it. I know that it's very polarizing, but it's amazing because it's kind of like high fashion in a key set.
It's such a cool idea, and I'm excited to see how it turns. Because it just finished on drop like last month, right?
Yeah.
I don't even remember this set, but man, this is TypeBeast 101.
Exactly. That's why I think that and it could only come from like an Asian like community member. I don't think that if like a member in the States or in Europe tried to do something like that, it wouldn't have turned out the same.
Was that 3?
That's 3, yeah.
3.
What's the final?
What's the 4 is typically the hardest.
It is because there's
you
just
have
so many.
You have the most sets fighting for the last spot.
I'm gonna go with Cam Wraith. Like it's a profile that we haven't seen yet. It's something that it's a throwback to Spectrum. Like I remember watching in like the Netflix kind of like watch your own adventure like TV thing that they did. And he was using a Spectrum computer, and it's just like a throwback to old things. It's nostalgic plus something new, and that I want new things to come out that look very good.
Yeah, lot of text on the caps there from Cam Wraith.
Yeah,
a lot going on. So
I actually had Abyss a hot minute ago. I got Abyss for a while. I still have a picture of it on a Tina that I had. I've been of all things, I bought it off of 001 Anthony, and I loved the look of the set, but I was not a fan of row 3 SA. And this was like, this was probably my 3rd set I ever received. I had Max Key SA Lime. I had the caps that come with a Tada 68, and I had Abyss. And so I was like, oh, I love SA. I love Max Key Lime. Oh, this is SA Abyss. Screw it. Let's do it. And I didn't realize that it was row 3 profile. And I was like, oh, this is not.
no, SA Abyss is sculpted
or sculpted, but not. It's not SA. It's not what I was used to, and so I was just like, okay, I'm not. I wound up selling it. Got my money back. That was kind of what taught me in this community that hey, whatever you get, you're just going to get your money back for it.
Yeah, so, I think that only Plum and like Necro are the only ones that I think that have sold below group pricing.
Yeah,
and even Necro's back up now.
Well, Plum is as well. Plum is selling for over group buy now as well. And I think that's more of like just because it was, so old at this point in terms of the community. So, and I think people have kind of turned around on Necro and Plum. They start to like it just because the whole fact of like they're no longer disappointed because they weren't like thinking it was going to be something completely different. So
Yeah, that could be it. There's so many new people in the community that they just want something, and they're like, "Oh, that's what plum looks like. I want that look."
Yeah, it doesn't matter what the renders look like anymore. I have real pictures.
yeah, Real Effects. The one he was talking about is MDA plastic. You'll know what you're looking at because the spacebar literally just says "This is plastic."
Love it.
The last of the fast four, the final one that has nothing to do with keyboards. Top 4 favorite foods.
Like Italian or like very specific, like lasagna.
It can be as specific as you want.
Okay.
But it can also, if you want to just say Italian food, then by all means. I'm pretty sure Osiris is just like Italian food is number one.
So growing up, like my mom would do like a lot of like paella. So like paella and fideuà is something that it's kind of like home style cooking for us. So like Valencian paella, which is chicken and rabbit, and then fideuà usually is more of seafood with squid ink.
Really good place so you can get some pretty decent paella out here in Dallas.
So for my second, chicken vindaloo. So I like very spicy foods. Indian curry is just something that I've always like enjoyed, especially with a side of garlic naan.
Can't go wrong with garlic naan.
You can't.
We've had literally, my wife has made garlic naan a bunch of times. We'll have it with breakfast with eggs. Like,
I know what else? It's just like unleavened bread and garlic, and then it's good.
And boom, and you're good.
Boom.
That's all you need.
Yeah, just put some garlic on.
I like a cubano or medianoche. Like those like very nice like pork and ham and like good mustard, like very like panini like bread. But with that, I also like papa rellena. So basically, it's like a mashed up potato ball, and inside of it has picadillo.
There's a lot of words I've never heard before, but I'm glad you're describing them.
So picadillo is like a chutney of beef and like vegetables that is within a potato ball, and then you bake the potato ball. And that's a papa rellena.
So it's like a twice baked potato, but with a lot of extra stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, like
it's delicious.
I was gonna say it sounds really good.
I mean, potatoes is another thing that I think most people are like, I fuck with potatoes.
Like it's a very versatile vegetable. All right,
damn right, it's a vegetable.
It's pupusas. So like, I remember when I was young, my parents and I took a road trip all the way down to Colombia from Los Angeles. So we stopped by a lot, like in Central America, and we had pupusas, and it was something that just stuck with me over the last decades or so.
Interesting.
Yep.
I'm gonna have to try some of this stuff.
I've had pupusas before, but that's got to be the most unique top 4 we've ever had for food.
Yeah, it's like you're kind of all over the place, which is awesome.
I don't know, like growing up, I wasn't a picky eater, and I grew up in Los Angeles, so there's like a huge amount of different cultures, a variety of foods, and then as I grew up, I was able to like travel to many places. So I've been to Miami, where like there's a huge Cuban like population, and you have to have the Cuban food there. And then the Cubano is like a sandwich that I had once there, and I will never have that exact sandwich, and I'm always chasing that white whale. Kind of like also I remember once I went to Iceland and I had harklark, which is like cured shark. It was an experience. I don't want to ever try it again, but I tried it.
Say I've eaten shark before and it was not fun. Like it was okay, but it was just like I could be like I'm wasting my money and my hunger on eating this shark.
Yeah, I once was in Japan for a business trip, and as I was with work people, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to order shark fin soup. Do you want some?" And me, not trying to be standing out, it's like, "Sure." And it was just like the simplest thing. It's like I'm eating tough cartilage that has no flavor. I don't understand why we're doing this. I don't understand this, but
Mom
okay.
didn't raise a quitter, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
No, that's like one of the best tacos I've ever had was the cow tongue taco we had in Oklahoma City.
Oh yeah, the lingua
That's like
taco.
that's like a top 5 taco for me, and I'm like, they're hard to find, but if I can, it's good. So, although the best taco I've ever had was at some weird food truck that was like the wheels were taken off, and it was just like a permanent residence on the corner in a street in South Dallas, and they didn't speak English. You just kind of have to point at what you want, and the entire menu is in Spanish. And still, I was like, I know that pollo means chicken, and I know carne asada is beef. And
But
it was just, it's one of those like tacos that's literally like cilantro, meat, and then they have like 3 different salsas that you can squirt it on. And I just did that, and I was like, this is the best taco I've ever had in my life.
always like the thing though, it's like you go into these like hole in the wall places and they just have the most delicious food, and you're like, I want everyone to know this place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for me, one of the best tacos I've had is it was in Miami. And it was in the middle of like a field, and it was like all these food trucks just come into this field, and they're there for the night, and it was incredible. We tried to go back the next day, and it was just an empty parking lot. We were like, damn
Oh,
it!
oh,
But it was amazing. Same thing though. Everything in Spanish. Uh, they were like they're like asking you, like I got elotes, and they were asking me like if I wanted other stuff in it, and I'm like, I don't know what they're saying, so I'm just gonna say yes.
So in Macanova, yes, it is Big Truck Taco in OKC. We went there a couple years back for a Magic the Gathering tournament of all things. And we went there one night, and we were like, we have to go back the next day. Like we drove like 30 minutes in the wrong direction to go eat these tacos again and turn around and head back. So there you go. It's a great place. If you're in Oklahoma City, Big Truck Taco.
If you're
Get the
ever going
link.
through there, it's a great spot.
But anyways, it's funny. You said when you asked the question something that's not about keyboards, but I feel like comes up on keyboard streams more often than not is food. But to table the conversation about food, back to keyboards. So one thing that I wanted to chat about tonight is we are starting to see the world of keyboards kind of open back up with a lot of group buy boards that's gone. The Austin just ran recently. We've got announcements on hopefully it's by the end of June, the Tend, which is a very, very hyped board. I'm very excited for that. The Key Colt group buy of the 160, 165s are wrapping up, announcements on that board as well. So lots of things it's starting to feel like, I feel like, everything came to a dead stop in March. And then, and most of April, everything kind of stopped in their tracks, but the keyboard community is kind of opening back up, which is good to see.
I think that there was a drought. I think that like since like January, there hasn't been like a very big keyboard um, group buy in a while. I know that the Enigma's board recently ran this past weekend, and it sold well. I I didn't get in because it just wasn't for me, but it seemed like it resonated with a lot of people in the community.
It's
Yeah.
cool. It's cool to see things also get, obviously with something like the Tend that has been talked for a while, that is finally starting to look like it's going to run here in the next couple months, as well as something like the 7V that was announced like a year ago, just finished. But it's also really cool to see like what Rama and Novel Keys are doing. You know,
Yeah.
with the NK65 V2 and the Kara or Kara, however it's supposed to be said. It's really cool to see those lower price points get kind of like invaded by someone that's not KBD fans.
Yeah, I think that as keyboard culture expands, not only within the the hobby, but outside. I know that in the past month or so, I've seen people outside of the hobby talk about getting a Keytron or whatnot because it was one available and two cheap.
Yep.
And I think that if novel keys can do that with the injected poly that they have, I think they're calling it what, the entry level.
Mhm.
And if they can keep that in stock, I think it'll sell very well because it's a great entry level for some people. I still think that the mounting system is very odd. I do know that they've fixed some of the issues with the first round. I particularly didn't like that it had only plate stabs, and this new version has the option that you can add, PCB mount, and that I think that will be better for a larger um, group of people, especially those that this won't be their first and only board. It'll be their first board into the hobby.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we don't like to make a lot of harsh statements, but in my opinion, which I feel like 99% of people agree, PCB mount stabs are just better than plate mount stabs.
Yes, exactly. Like
It's
that.
that's in my opinion, that's one of the few facts about this hobby that's like, well, what's better? Okay. Like, or like lubing your stabs is better than not lubing your stabs. PCB mount is just going to be better and easier to use. And that's the other thing too, is PCB mount stab or plate mount stabs are actually slightly more difficult to kind of get correct.
Yeah, the way that they're just inside of the plate can't give you a real feel for them until they're like fully mounted. And the mounting style of the NK65 is also kind of weird because it's the PCB is screwed to the plate and then the plate is screwed down to the bottom. It's just very odd. Like I haven't seen any other board that has the same mounting style or anywhere near that. So it's also confusing for newcomers in that sense. It was confusing for me, and I've been building boards for a while now.
It's like it's like a mixture of like a weird, yes, someone's talking about like weird tray mount, or like the doesn't the tofu has like that screw on the wind keyless tofu that screws the
Oh,
plate into the PCB, but then you
can,
mix that with the mounting style of like the first KBD 67, the one that mounted on the bottom, that was like a bottom mount. Yeah, it's a strange one, but the thing is I just love the price point because I was literally talking with one of my buddies 2 nights ago about what would be a good board to get, right? Like someone who wants to get into the community, and it's like, well, there's not really a whole lot unless you're willing to get something from KBD fans, or you want to buy something like the Alt or the Control from Mass Drop. This is another option that's like really cool. Same thing with like the Kara. Having that purple color is going to sell a lot of units just in its own. It's going to give that people that nostalgia of their original Game Boy color in that purple, and they're gonna want it just for that reason alone.
yeah.
I like that the poly version of the N65 comes in at like $95, which is a great price point. But I am also kind of disappointed that the metal version, uh, has increased in price. So last time it was 150, this one's 185, I believe. And there is going to be a disparity. And while $35 doesn't seem a lot for us because we're, you know, we're looking at $400, $500, 60%. But someone that's very new and entry into the community or the hobby will see that disparity and be like, well, for $100, I can get the plastic one that I might not like the color and it's plastic, or I can spend almost double and get the metal one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a tough call to make because like I remember with the Tada, whenever Osiris was like, you can get this, and I highly recommend spending an extra $50 to go for the metal. And then that turns it from $100 to $150 board. But it does, purple, I think, to me, like, is, in my opinion, purple was not the best color they could have chosen. I think that not I have nothing against purple. I like purple. It's not I have nothing against it, but except for the fact that it's the Minnesota Vikings color, so maybe that's my deep-rooted hatred for it. But although I hate San Francisco more than anybody right now, so because I'm a diehard Packers fan.
Oh, okay.
So
Sorry.
sorry, not sorry, right? But I do think purple is kind of that, like, it's a very harsh color. They could have gone with clear, they could have gone with black, they could have gone with gray, something that it can be harder to match keycaps to it, and maybe they're trying to sell the cubic profile. I don't know. At the end of the day, I mean, it doesn't bother me. It might just wind up selling more of the metal boards. And honestly, hearing about the price increase of the metal boards, that's probably just because of shipping is ridiculous right now.
Yeah.
That has to be like the main reason that board is just skyrocketed in price. But once again, I mean, we're talking about $100, $200 boards that are going to be a solid pickup, and you're not going to have to pay a bunch, like, $15, $20 shipping, and potentially take 3 weeks for you to get from KBD fans. And honestly, like, the best stuff coming from KBD fans is not stuff that you can get just straight, other than maybe a tofu.
People tend to rag a lot on the 5-degree, but I think that is still one of the better pre-mounts for people entering into the community. They can, it's what, $80, $85, $90.
Yep.
You can get that, and then you go to either Canyon Keys or any other, vendor that has a PCB that you can get for 60. That is like $35 to $60. Yeah. And then for $150, you have, your entry level, keyboard.
Yep.
And there's the whole factor of, like, for me, and especially for a lot of people who are newer, the biggest thing is, like, we always talk about how, keyboards are so great, you can make them your own, you can use, like, QMK, and then we have VIA. For the longest time, VIA was reserved for only boards that were, like, considered, like, the higher, medium, high-end market, right? They were only your bigger players, and now with boards like the ANSI and now the NK65, it's bringing that usability to a lower price point, which is really helping, because while QMK is much better than it was like 3 or 4 years ago in terms of usability, it's still a lot harder than literally just opening up VIA saying, I want this key to be this now. Okay.
Yeah, it's much easier. Like, I know how to code. I do that for a living sometimes. But even then, I didn't want to come home and be like, let me figure out how to program this PCB the way that I wanted. Like, it wasn't for.
Shout out again to Macanova, who, like, held my hand through working with QMK, because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I just want my nano bento that I'm trying to justify spending money on to work.
The two, like, biggest, like, advantages QMK has had in its entire lifetime has been the configurator online, that you can basically go, this is the PCB that I have. Someone already has the key map. I just need to put in this is what the layout I want. This is what I wanted on this layer, and then you just build it online and download it, flash it, easy. And then VIA has been like a game changer. Like,
oh yeah,
I remember talking to Wilbo back when he was in the Top Class Discord, and he's like, I'm going to do this. I'm working on this, app that will do this. And I asked him a little bit about it, and he's like, it's going to be Electron, it's going to be QMK, under the hood, but it's going to be a very user oriented application that anyone can use. And I was like, great, that's amazing. What can we do to help this, to speed this up? He never got back to me, but it showed up. It was as VIA, and I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah, it really is game changing. I mean, like, I will, for a build, I'll test my PCB. It's very rare that I even go in and, like, before, with boards that are not VIA, I won't sit there and work on QMK during the stream. But with VIA, I can, like, easily just, boom, 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 there. So it's done. By the way, everything, because because flashing's annoying. What's great and what I love is like so I have the WT60 on the Fiel. And what's great, tray mount is a little annoying to screw and unscrew because you can lose the screw like between the plate and the PCB, and it's just
You're just sitting there doing the shake until it falls out.
trying to get it out, get some tweezers in there, and it's really annoying. But now it's like, oh no, I don't have to worry about. I don't have to remember what key I put reset on. Like my Singa is a V1, and that's one that I just recently built, and I'm like, like good luck. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna figure this out.
Yeah, I feel you. Like, I recently flashed my my unicorn, and it has a TGR like PCB, which I like. TGR, he makes great things, but no one's infallible. Uh, th- them selling a boot mapper client PCB in 2019, kind of a disrespect to the community. Not gonna lie. You know, by that time, Bootmapper client was already dead. I don't understand why, mini USB was still being sold until recently. Like, I know that some of the Jane CEs are still not completely shipping, and they have USB mini and they have Bootmapper client. Luckily, it's been ported to QMK, but yeah, it's one of those like criticisms that I still have. I know that Heine's working on the next PCB that TGR is going to be working on, and it's going to be QMK. But yeah, it's one of those things that it's kind of weird that for the longest time.
That long, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and it's just like what with the last round of I don't think the current ones that just ran, but the TX boards all shipped with Jingon PCBs, which is just like Jigon, yeah.
Yeah. So
Jigon,
and even
VQ.
then, the 60% board still shipped with those old ones.
Oh.
The only one, if they had to make a new PCB, they made it better. But I guess they just still had like a bajillion. It's like I've got this freaking USB mini, complete. It works just fine, but it's a USB mini, like Jigon keyboard, 60% layout, and I'm like, what? I guess this is just like a pool toy now. Like, like I'm never going to use this PCB.
That was one of the reasons that I kind of like was hesitant on always getting a TX board, because there's Liku and there was Jigon. I don't know how to program those things. I don't want like QMK is something that I took the time to learn a little bit, but I don't want to learn a brand new thing that might or might not disappear at any time. Because we saw Bootmapper client, it was there. Winkeylist was a huge vendor, and then all of a sudden shut down. And because that entire thing was closed source, no one can add to it. No one like the only reason that old Bootmapper client PCBs are still alive is because Merlin has ported most of them to QMK.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Winkeylist. Okay, Winkeylist was like a cool website. Like they had cool products. They were doing a lot for the acrylic boards and a lot of different options for people at a low price, and it was always in stock. And then all of a sudden, it was just gone.
It's one of the other vendors other than TX that was Korean based that was open to the rest of the hobby.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if we ever will know why they just decided to shut down, but
it was just harder to compete. Like, people took TMK and QMK and just started making cheaper boards, and there wasn't a return on investment of what they originally had put in. And sadly, that's business. It was sad for them to go and not continue it even as a hobbyist. But I understand from a business standpoint. They're like, we're not making enough money to continue this, to do this long term as we were doing it in the past.
You good now, Chewy?
I'm good, man. Sorry, if I drink alcohol on stream, like within 10 minutes, my bladder's like, you're gonna piss yourself right now. Like even if it's like half a beer, it's just like you're going to die. And I'm like, we got at least another hour, man. I'm not gonna make it. So, but no, it still just baffles me that these boards are these PCB. It's the most important part of a keyboard, right? It makes your keyboard work. Like,
Going back, I ported it from Bootmapper client to QMK with VIA, so it was like the easiest thing in the world. I plug it in, and I'm like, wow, this board that had 3 different firmwares at one point, now I'm able to control this with VIA. It's god easy, and I can give this to anybody that doesn't know QMK and be like, hey, you can program this board to be exactly the way you want it.
Yeah, so the Iron 165, the PCB hasn't been merged over to VIA quite yet, but it's ready and it's everything's set up in QMK. So I was like, last night I was like, God, I haven't had to do this in a while. I'm like, I almost had to be like, do I still have Toolbox downloaded on my computer? I'm like, yep, okay, there it is.
I always forget that like the compile. It's like compile. And I'm always like, fuck, which link do I press to? When I was doing it for the Singa, I was like, I literally took me like 8 minutes to figure out which link I pressed so that I could get the hex file. I think I compiled it like 4 separate times. I was like, I'm so sorry.
Out of practice.
It happens. I'm lazy. But what was something cool when we gave away a kind of like a medium beginner board to a medium board, like a kind of a beginner board with some higher end products in it. So, and Osiris was like, I think it'd be a really good idea if we gave away this with an ANSI, because then while they don't get to do that terrible run through QMK, you can give this to somebody. The board was meant to be given to somebody that is just getting started into keyboards. And I was very happy to see that the person that got it, said, "Hey, got the board in. I'm ready to ship it. I'm ready to give it to my friend who just built a gaming PC and is interested in keyboards." But the fact that you can just go, "Hey, just go on VIA, like, and it will completely, giving someone unless they had an AND Pro or any of these 60% boards that are kind of more popular now. That's the one thing that I wanted to say about the Novel Keys board is giving someone a 60% can be daunting because they're like, where are my arrow keys? Whereas, my FRO, but like, where are my arrow keys? Where's my page up, page down? Where's that? And that's why I'm like 65%, I know I'm not a big fan of them, but 65% a great stepping stone into getting someone into keyboards because it's a small form factor and it doesn't freak people out.
It doesn't. Like it
just pisses me off personally.
Does it say, are you promoting 65%, Chewy?
Start it off, go for it, man. But you just know you'll be buying a better board later down the road.
65% is the better of all the trade-offs. It doesn't have any like downsides. It has your arrows, it has your navigation keys if you want it. It doesn't. It's cut down enough that you're able to be functional and not miss anything.
I would 100% agree with that because of like the fact of while yes, for like Chewy's argument always is like, I don't need arrows because I do this, right? Well, that is technically a trade-off, right? Like you have to do something else to achieve the same goal. Whereas like realistically, most people aren't going to be using their F keys. Half the time, the computer that you have, like if you have a laptop, your F keys aren't actually bound to what they're supposed to do anyway. They do something completely different. And then you have to try to make them be F keys again. So yeah, 65%, I love it.
It's a great 65%. It's a great beginner layout, and that's about as far as it goes. Once you upgrade to the big boy club and you want to get to something else, then there you go.
I mean, I know that at least in Asia, like Arizona 60% is really popular. I once tried it and I thought it was the most horrible thing in the world.
Fucking hated it.
I can't stand the question mark on the other side of the shift.
Yep. That I tried that on a Chiwi 60. I don't use that often, but it's there. Like I was like, I want to see why this might be popular, and I tried it, and I was like, nope, not for me. I like okay, but I can see why it might be a thing because people want the smallest form factor, but they also want the usability of arrow keys.
Yeah.
And sadly, the bitter trade-off is just having a 65%.
Yep. What was horrible about that experience for me is I was like, I don't think I use question marks that much, and so I put it on a function layer. I put it function right shift instead of just putting on the function um, like a normal person would. But I remember how many times I was like, "Oh my god, this is so annoying having to press 3 separate keys just to get a question." And how often I just like roll my hands on like shift question mark. Like I don't really use my right shift for anything other than that, but I couldn't get rid. I know a lot of people go, "Oh, I never use my right shift." I'm like, "No, for question mark, I could."
Yeah, I think that a lot of people think they don't use like right bracket or curly brackets or tilde or all these things, and they're like, I can totally do a 40% or a 50%, and then you get one, and you're like, oh fuck, how am I going to write my password or whatnot? And you're like, damn, I have to remember where I put it in which layer. Yeah, that I personally 65% is my layout. Like that's where I feel comfortable. I do 60s a lot because I can do Vim arrows, just because habit. But other than that, like I have the 50 and I have a minivan. They're basically in a closet somewhere.
Yeah, they just kind of. I always wonder the countries that the 60% arrows are really popular in. I wonder if they just like don't use question. If question mark is just not a key that is used in their typing. Also,
So I
Brez,
know
it's shaking because I'm shaking my.
I think that it's popular in the Philippines and like Myanmar, so like the South Pacific, which they do speak a lot of English. But so I don't think it's they don't use question marks. It's just like they're just accustomed to that, or they want something that is the smallest form factor that one is relatively inexpensive compared to other customs, and two, they want arrows, so they have to just adapt to that. And
Mhm.
you know, the human mind is very malleable, and if you work on something constantly, you'll adapt.
Yeah.
I just don't want to because I have a variety of other things.
Because I can't remember what board was it. I think it was like the Pod 67, I think, or 60. Um, but it was forced. It was forced 60% with arrows.
Yeah, it was a College 60.
And I was like, I like this board and I would love to own it, but I don't want to be forced into that layout.
Well, that's.
There's
Oh, sorry, you go.
there's a certain duck board that I like, but it has the forced like arrows. It's like the last three, and then right where a delete key would be, and you're like, that is the weirdest layout for an arrow cluster. And I was just like, nope, just can't do it. It
Mm.
would break my muscle memory of like years and years of doing stuff.
Yeah, and I think like that's why I've always I kind of made some hard and fast rules later in my keyboard journey because I had a lot of boards and then I actually just got rid of like most of them except for a TX60, which I don't even own anymore. So I think my oldest board right now is either my OSA or Fiel, whichever one came first, because I got them back to back days. Um, but mainly because I was like, well, I need to be able to use it for everything, as much as possible, as much as that layout will provide me. So like obviously I don't if I'm going to be using a 60%, I know I'm giving up my numpad, and I do have an Austin that I love, but like for gaming, I want to be able to game on every single board. And yes, I have gamed on an Alice layout. It was not ideal, and it was not a PvP game. I just played through Gears 5. And I was like, okay, I'm not hurting anybody. But I that's why I don't do HHKB, because I need that bottom control. And people go, oh, just use that. I'm like, no, I just won't buy that board. Like, it's a lot simpler. It just it was fine for work, but then even then I was like, I want to be able to trade out my board no matter what. That's why I put split backspace on everything, including my Austin. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
split
want to have
best
to change.
split best base is the best base. Come at me.
It is.
Come at us.
I
Look at
mean,
It's just so much
have
easier.
3 achievers in the community.
It just is. It's like if you have the option of not lubing an extra stab, take it.
Yep.
That's why I also split right shift. One, no one really uses it, and two, you get an extra key.
Yeah. It's just like value. That's what I always talk about.
Value.
Split right shift is value.
It's aesthetically better. You don't have to buy an extra stab. When the fuck are you using pipe key so much that you need you need a 1.5 U key for it? Like, maybe you are. I don't know. But guess what? It doesn't take anything away. You're not losing a key. Like, and it's shorter. I got short pinkies, man.
Also easier you split right shift because you can put your layer there, and then you can do Vim arrows much easier.
Not to mention the fact that like the 2.75 shift or whatever, however big it is, it's so awkward looking. Like when you look at a normal like a 60% with split right shift, and then you look at like a normal like 60% like a ducky or something that's like a big box, you're like, that just looks ugly. It's so big.
My issue with those is, for whatever, I've never gotten a 2.75 shift stab to sound good. They're so big, and I've never gotten it to like I've never gotten it to where I'm happy with it, where I'm like, oh, this is fine. Like, it's because it's just it's so much bigger, but it takes up the same amount of space as the 2.25. And I'm like, 2.25 sounds a lot better. And also, like on a win keyless board, that's where, because I use caps lock function instead of right shift function. And so, like on a win keyless board, that's where I put my Windows key. I don't remember who said that, but someone said, "Oh, I put it there," and I was like, "That's fucking brilliant." So, but when shift you don't use bigger than the enter key, you have a problem.
Conversation about like novel keys and Rama doing new injected poly like boards. I am very excited that they're doing new boards like that, but I am also kind of disappointed that as a hobby we haven't explored more materials. I know that there was I think it was Jax that was trying to do a PE like Alice, right? Uh, but other than that, we really haven't really explored other composites or even like materials. I was reading today that if you add 5% to steel, like it becomes 125% tougher and stronger than regular steel. And we haven't really explored that. We just know, I think the iron has like an actual iron. The FE is like an actual iron like casing, but we haven't seen a lot of that. We've seen bent steel that's coming out, but a lot of our boards are either aluminum or copper nowadays, and we haven't really explored all these other materials. Yeah, I know that a titanium is really hard to machine. So is like tungsten. It's one of the hardest materials, and it's also very brittle. But there's so many others that we can like try. In the last couple of years, I've been able to talk to a few manufacturers and distributors of certain materials, and I'm like, hey, what would it take to do certain things? And it's hard. It's not easy, but I would like if we can start exploring those things, because yeah, aluminum is great. It's tried and true, but there are other things that we can try. And I think that as the hobby grows, and if they want to differentiate itself from other boards, I think that that's where one of the better places to do so, because a TKL will kind of look like a TKL no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Or a 60% will always look kind of like a 60%.
Yep. Top down, unless it's something like the JO2 that has a 6 head on it, it's going to be pretty much the same. But no, you bring up a very good point of, people are always going to make aluminum boards. Aluminum boards are going to continue to come out. But when you've typed on all these aluminum boards with brass plates or aluminum boards with, it was nice that Palm came out, and this, this statement really explains why you really like your Sirius, because it's different. It's a different material. It's something, would have loved to seen Corian. That would have been amazing if it existed.
Yeah.
Very hard to machine though. That's the problem. Like with some of the materials, and I think Mr. Petrov brings up a great point of the in-house machining by companies like Salvin, Keycult, and then stuff that Project Keyboards are doing. I think we're going to see more experimentation with it because they're going to have the ability to not be like, hey, China, try this. And then 2 days later, China's like, it was okay. There's a lot of micro adjustments on things that you're able to do if you're just sitting there looking at it that maybe fixes some of these manufacturing issues that some of these materials have if you are right in front of it. Whereas when you're overseas and there's like that big disparity of time and big disparity of difference makes it harder. I'm really excited for that.
I'm not diminishing because I know that people have tried. It's hard. One, because if you try to do it here locally in the States, a manufacturer is not going to give you time of day because your orders will be so small that they're like, no, why would we want to do this for you? Because it's not worth our time. And in China, there is that language barrier. There is that not only time difference, but also cultural difference. And, I know that Riot and 159 have been able to go to China and actually meet their manufacturers and have that relationship. It's not going to be like I want a brand new material tomorrow and that's what's going to happen. It's going to be like an ongoing process.
Yeah, and it's tough because also a lot of the people that are manufacturers might not, they're not going to be as in, especially with like the, as we talked about earlier, the hobby's very different around the world. It's different. People are looking for different things. So when you're trying to tell someone, well, does it feel like this? Does it look like this? Does it sound like this? There's only so much you can do over messages and, as Osiris stated, language barriers, that it's like, these people that are doing the like stacked acrylic boards, those guys I think kind of have it awesome where they're like, they can try these things and they can trial and error. And then as well as like, that's also, I know a lot of people are calling for these things of like, hey, I want a board made out of this. Cool, prototype it. It's like, well, I don't have $3,000 to prototype a few boards. Well, it's like, well, it's probably never going to happen because not a lot of people are willing to just throw out a bunch of money with a very likely chance that it's going to fail and never work.
I've spoken to a couple people and they're like, hey, we're already using tungsten carbide like bits to mill our aluminum, and that's the hardest bits that we currently can afford, and it's going to be hard if we want to do something that's tungsten or titanium. And I understand that, and it's going to take a lot from someone to do it, but I do want someone to try. It's going to take time. I remember, as I mentioned, I have little weights. I have little like, I don't know if you can see. This is aluminum. I mean iron. This is a little tungsten bricks that I have samples, and I've talked to suppliers, and I've tried to get this off the ground for a personal board. Like just fucking around. Why not?
For the heaviest board ever.
Exactly. And talking to supply, it's hard. I understand this, but I would like to see that's the next evolution of the enthusiast hobby portion of the hobby.
Yeah,
because
sorry.
Yeah, I think that we're at a point. We're in the inflection point in which we're basically mainstream now. Everyone that is either watching Twitch or anyone that's like just at home wants a better board, so they'll be able to get either a Razer or whatnot, and they'll get kind of like, oh, what's that Keytron that's working, or what's that novel keys, and then slowly do those things, and we'll be able to have those metal boards. But within the enthusiast portion of the hobby, we want something different.
Well, and that's like what we talked about before of how like boards that were made in 2018, 2018 boards are like kind of trash compared to boards that are coming out now. Like when you look at it.
Yeah, there was a reason I didn't get into the gasket.
But I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, I look at something like the Iron 165 that I built last year or last night versus something like the
What
M.
world are you living on?
What?
Last
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry.
what world are you living?
But I built last night versus something like the M65A that was a 2018 board. It's completely different. It's worlds different in the way that it feels, the way that it looks. Not saying that the M65A is not a great board because it wasn't. It's like an iconic board in the community, but it's still like it's not even close to being the same quality and standards that we are used to now.
Yeah, but you also have to compare like the Iron 165 SE was a what 400
Yeah.
$500 board. The M65 when it ran was 250.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize how inexpensive the M65A was. Like it was a pretty
They
cheap board.
for like $600 still.
Like I bought mine's aftermarket because I didn't join the hobby until like after it was shipping. I bought it aftermarket. I paid $500 for it. It's still the board that I have the most sentiment towards. But yeah, I nowadays I wouldn't pay double, group buy pricing for anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy to me that that board will still sell regularly on Mech Market for $500 or the high fours. Like,
Yeah,
you'd buy a group buy board for the same price. You got to wait a little bit, but it's gonna be just as good, if not better.
that the M65 has just that aesthetics
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that is kind of timeless.
Yeah. That's why do you think the Fiel's just ran a 5th round? Like the Fiel is commonly talked about as the best tray mount board. It's
Yep.
popularized with the Nathan Kim typing sound video. It's an amazing board that they've made better. They've improved it with the times. And then now they have the Tend coming out, which is basically, hey, we're gonna make a Fiel, but we're gonna 2020 this bitch. Like, and there's a reason that these boards can stand the test of time, but there are other, like I remember we had Yanglad on and the M0110 still waiting. Although those are moving. Those are actually, there's like discussion and he's like talking and fulfilling orders and all that. But he was like, what sucks is that board's going to be coming out in 2020, but it's not going to be good because this is a 2018 design.
The advancement of machining and the quality of design of boards in the last 2 years has skyrocketed so much, and just as well as how things are being IC'd, both key sets and boards. I mean, key sets a couple years back was like, hey, we have these colors that we think that we can use that are stock. Now everyone's like trying to use Pantone. Like I know that certain people have like the RAL decks, just be like, hey, we're going to use this color and we know exactly what's going to look like. You should get in. I mean, vendors now have, pick of the litter on which key set they want to run, and some of them are booked. I think that most of them are booked until the end of the year by now.
Yep.
And it's awesome to see because it's like when there's more competition from the interest check end, the design end, it just means that the overall products, the endpoint gets better because people are having to be pickier about what they choose as far as from a vendor perspective. And then because everyone wants to sell the most products. Like everyone wants to sell 1,000 key sets every single month. So they got to really kind of wade the masses and figure out which one is going to be the best and is going to do well.
Exactly. And because of that, I think that designers, even the old guard designers, have had to up their games on like how to promote and how to showcase. Like I know that Zambuman's like Lux is running right now, and it's a great set. I don't think that it's going to be amazing like Nautilus is, but it's still a great set. And then we're seeing Oblotsky also has an updated key set that's going to run, and then we have all these newcomers. We have all these people that are rendering so crisp. I know that talking to the designer for Dracula, dude is amazing with the renderers, and you're like, how are you making something? You can see the smudges on certain keycaps, and you're like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, it's and what's great too is this competition is people are starting to kind of rise up as when I joined, it was Mito and Oblotsky and Zombuman. Those were like the three that you knew, and like they were the key set designers. And now there's a lot more. I always forget the guy that did Dracula's name, but I mean he knocked it out of the
Piku, I
park
think.
just on one
Yeah.
set. But
Piku.
Piku, Olivia, Bip's done a lot of stuff. Rensuya has got just so many freaking keycaps, and we can fight all day long about that. But I respect him as a designer. And then you've got people like Dixie, even Dixie, who's a vendor, is designing amazing keycap sets.
My whole thing about these things is that as designers, you're only as good as your last set. Right? And that's one of the things we've seen. Oblotsky, he doesn't put out a lot of sets. We've seen Mito, and he seems to stick to a formula in which he tries to sticks to a formula of rerunning certain sets in different profiles because they're noob traps. Ren had a great first set. Mizu was amazing. I personally have it. I like it. I got Peaches and Cream. I don't think that it turned out as it was showcased. I think that there was missteps, and if instead of showing Pantones or saying this is what's going to look like, instead of saying, hey, we have these Pantones or even RAL colors, this is what's going to look like, instead of having a subjective change later in the color matching process, it would have been different.
Fair. I still love it. I still love and now I think it's funny that I put peaches and cream on your board because I think it looks fantastic. While yes, it is a little bit different. We've talked a lot about like Rensuya is someone that while it might not be 1-to-1 of me holding my keycap up to my screen, I trust Rensuya is going to make something that to me is going to look good on a board.
Yeah, I remember going into 8008 and looking at the gray, and then I messaged Dixie and I was like, hey, that's a great gray. I was trying to look for like a case or something that would hit it. And he's like, no, it's not gray. It's like a navy blue kind of deal. And I was like, no, I'm seeing it. And he's like, what kind of monitor do you have? Like, I have a calibrated P3 display, RGB 100, sRGB 100%, 98% or whatever, the W, whatever they use. And he's like, really? And I was like, I thought that I showcased that it was blue, and then that's when the breakdown of like, hey, this is the blue of like Nautilus, this is the blue of like Midnight, not Midnight, Metropolis, and so forth and so on. And then you can see a comparison of what it's going to look like. I think that as colors get much more closer to each other, because eventually that's what's going to happen with all these designs, we should be asking designers to start doing something similar to that. So we can be much more attuned to what their vision is. It doesn't have to be 1-to-1, because we're also seeing what Nebulant and 159 are doing with Bingzu. They're like literally doing color science and like color spectrometers and all this shit. And I was like, I've never seen that, like even in my professional life, or doing other stuff or color grading and whatnot. And it just goes to the dedications of certain vendors. I know Dixie has like a RAL setup that showcases colors in different lighting within this box. We have 159 that's doing this. I've heard other vendors sending RAL decks to like designers to make sure that they're picking the correct colors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know 159 is like, I don't want people to say that this doesn't match. I want it to match.
and that's, we've talked about it before. This is why I don't even it used to be this, it has to match perfectly. It has to be this exact perfect match. I think if you go back and look, and I'll hate on it and jump on this grenade. Olivia didn't do a 100% job straight from the screen onto the keycaps. It did not. But guess what? It came out to be a great looking set. What matters is the end product that comes out.
But Olivia didn't sell well.
No,
Olivia
it's fair.
barely hit. Exactly. And we can't compare an interest check and a group buy that happened in late 2000,
it's
17?
No. Yeah, it was
18.
April of 2018.
Yeah.
April.
So early to what's happening now.
Yeah, no, it's very different. But to me, like if I personally ran a keycap set, which honestly I wouldn't, because I would just drive myself crazy with people being like, "What the?" I wouldn't even show the color matching process. Like it's one of those things that's like, I'm going to give you something that's going to look as close to what my vision is. I've shown you my vision. I'm going to give you something that's going to look as close to that as possible. And if I think that there's a way to approach that where you just go, hey, like up front and full disclosure, we're not going to do this whole, here are the samples, let's everybody talk about it. I'm going to just tell you that I'm going to try and get it as close to this as possible, to give people that option of like, oh, I might not want to join this in case this goes south. So
I want to talk a little bit of like the key set, because I've had a project that's on and off again, but I don't think that I'll ever run it, just because I don't think it has mass appeal. And two, I tend to speak my mind, and people, I don't want to be a liability to a vendor, right? That's the thing, because once if I showcase a keycap set and a vendor, or I take it to a vendor and ask them, hey, would you want to carry this? And then they say yes, I would have to dull some of my edges, right? That's because eventually you're showcase, not only do you represent yourself, but you represent the keycap and you represent the vendor.
Yep.
And you can like a keycap set, but if you don't like the designer or you don't like the vendor, you're not going to buy that keycap set.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fair. I think that there have been instances in certain people that don't like certain people and don't buy the keycap set, and later it's like, I kind of like it, but I still don't want to give so and so money, right? Or I'll probably get it secondhand. What I also want to do might not sell very well, and I don't want to be a person that puts a vendor in a tough spot.
I think that's like a very like adult way to look at it. Like that's a very logical way to look at it, because you are representing the vendor when they're running your set, you represent them 100%. Because people are going to make that it's going to be synonymous, at least for that time that it is running. It is going to be synonymous.
Not even that. I think that seeing the popularity of keyboards going into the future, I think there's going to be R2s and R3s of certain things. So those things can remain with a vendor, and if you don't want a messy breakup or a not to cause drama, but what kind of happened with Ren and Dixie, right? Two of the Avatar sets ran with Dixie, and then we don't know what really happened, but then all of a sudden Ren it is exclusive to Canyon Keys. I tried to ask what that meant. Is it a guarantee that everything will run? Is it a guarantee that all the sets that Ren does are going to be run in Canyon Keys, are only Rens, and so forth and so on? There was some clear up, but there wasn't never a complete clear up of what that meant.
Yeah.
And we're just figuring it out now. Like, if there was a round 2 of Mizu, is it going to be run on Dixie Med, or is it going to be on Canyon Keys? Does the work that Dixie Mech did on the back end and behind the scenes going to be, lack for royalties, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, and we have to kind of start thinking in that sense going forward, because keyboards is getting to be a big business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is it going to be like the music industry where, like, even though you're no longer on that label, the label owns the rights to that record, so they still get the royalties from it? So I don't know. It's interesting.
I think it is interesting because honestly, the first thing that I thought of was I was like, shit, Dixie had that sweet offer that if you got in on Mizu, you can get like a Terra desk mat or something, or if you get like a. And I was like, well, there goes that. Like, you're not going to be able to. And then we always talked about the 4-pack collector's edition of the Avatar Keycap. I was like, well, that's out the door. And I didn't even, it took me. I think it was Osiris brought it up back when all this happened. I was like, oh, well, what does that mean for round twos of each of these sets? Does that mean that it's just dead? Or what? And I think the good thing is, while yes, it is becoming more big business, it is still run by community oriented people. I think that's the savior in this specific situation. I can't speak for either UPass or Dixie on how they're going to handle that, or even if that's going to be a thing. But it does bring up that interesting concept of whether or not, like, what do you do? And it's when you're at first, I know it was kind of the wild west last year in 2019 with designers. It was just like, I'm gonna get as much stuff out to as many different vendors as possible. And so like Mizu and Peaches and Cream ran within 3 months of each other, if I believe, if I'm correct. And I think it was or either 3 or 4. It was April and like the summer was Peaches and Cream. And I even back then I was like, it's a little strange that he's going to 2 different ones, but at the end of the day, I understand it. Like he's going to who's going to take him. So, but yeah, it's it's interesting to see. I remember that news of him going, hey, I'm sticking with Kanekys like permanently. I was like, that could change. We haven't really seen anything as of yet, but that could really impact the community.
Yeah, I think that when that kind of broke, I was walking home, and I think the only good example that we have currently is Mito with Drop.
Yeah.
Other than that, like I think that all other sets have, Zambuman has run stuff on both Drop and almost, and several different vendors, and so has Oblotsky now.
I mean, to be fair, Dixie only runs his set through Dixie, so we didn't talk about blind loyalty to a brand.
I mean, Dixie loves Apple, and vertically integrating your company is a smart move.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, hey, it's the thing is it's all the sets do well, and all the sets are good that he's done of his own stuff.
My question is, does Dixie pay Dixie Mech and Dixie himself separately? Like,
does he invoice out to Garrett?
How does that split up?
You never know.
Sends out a contract to Garrett Sucks. Which, for people who don't know, that was his username before. Everything was Dixie Mech. It was Garrett Sucks.
Isn't it? That's still his Geek Hack?
Like, probably.
I think so.
Yeah. But yeah, we live in a strange time, and I feel like the community was put on pause for like 6 weeks while content creators were just pumping out content, and then now that the community is picking back up, it's like we've got things going on like, fast.
There was a lot of stuff. I'll give you that. Not a lot of it good.
It's honestly, other than Grain, there wasn't a whole lot of key sets that I was super duper hyped on. Nautilus, I own Nautilus. Nautilus is just not my jam. I never found a board that I thought it really looked good on. And I really like Masterpiece, but it's a set that like I love, but I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever put it on a keycap set, on a.
I like the colors of Masterpiece. I don't speak Japanese. I don't know other I don't know any Asian languages very well enough to put on my board. So it's just not for me. I like the colors. I think that there is a classic kit and an icon kit that if you mix for like $80 or $100, you can fit out a 60%. And I was like, maybe, possibly, I don't know. Maybe
it's a lot of work for.
It is, but it's a pretty set. I think if you can get around the legends, It'll
I will say that it's the first time that we've seen like mono legends that are a different language.
Well, we got Perestroika.
Oh, that's right.
That one I actually do really like, mainly because since Cyrillic has since that has a bunch of different like they have English letters visibly,
Yeah.
but they mean different letters. And so like there's like 8 different letters that are in the English language, but none of them are in the right spots. So I'm really excited for that. I'm not even that big of a fan of red. I say that with a freaking red shirt on,
Red shirt.
but like as a keycap, I'm like I wasn't really a big fan of Hamon, and like GMK Samurai to me, I think is the most like overrated set of all time. But for for Perestroika, I'm like it goes well with the theme, like Russia, like I think personally I would have chosen Yellow Legends just to go with the kind of USSR theme, but
Yeah.
and then Pluto, yes, Yuri had mono Cyrillic as well, but that wasn't the base kit. I think is what the point Starstone was making. That the base kit of
Yes.
Masterpiece is all.
But so well, Apiary, thank you very, very much for the raid with 77 people. Guys, if you have not seen Apiary Keyboards, please give her a follow. Check her out. She is a phenomenal streamer. But so while I'm not going to ask you for any peeks into the next TypeBeast newsletter, and honestly, like, this is not a like, oh, we're partners with TypeBeast. Literally, I drop everything when I see the email. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm going to go sit down in my chair and read through it, like every word.
Oh, that's too kind.
It's well written. But what are some things that you are looking forward to?
Well, the thing about the newsletter is that I write about what's being IC'd or what group buy is coming up next, and right now there hasn't been anything new. That's actually no. There's OG Dolch that dropped today. I think that's going to be kind of nice. We haven't seen that in a while. It also has R5 bottom row,
Ooh,
so that's new.
fancy.
But it doesn't have R0 top row, which is
Really?
odd. But
That's odd.
yeah. Lightning is the designer, and I think that Project Keyboards is going to run it. It's in August, I believe. So
Ooh, looking
forward to that.
Said OG Dolch.
Yeah.
I'm
Man,
trying to look.
R5 R0 is a unique feel that I wish more people would do.
I got a second white on black base kit from Drop, and I got into like the R0 R5 kit that Novel Keys was running a couple weeks back. That's going to be my I'm going to try this out.
Mm-hmm. Well, what was it? The Carbon Round 3 or whatever. Yep. I think they ran. Or I don't know if they ran row 5, but I know they did row 0.
I think the Boneyard kit.
So,
but other than that, like, there really isn't anything really big. I know that people are looking forward to the 10 group buy. Right now nothing is really sparked my interest. I think that it could be just because we're coming out of this lull and there's really isn't anything big that's being showcased. Oh, actually, no, I take that back. The number 3. It has a very organic look to it that we haven't seen in other TKLs. So it kind of differentiates itself from other, yep, that looks like a TKL kind of look. I want to see more of it before I have a complete idea, an opinion, but I think that could be something that is going to be polarizing, and it should be, but it's good because it's different.
Yeah, and like personally, like I wasn't when I saw it, I was like, I mean, it's unique and it's different. And I like that they're experimenting with different things because while key cults are great, and a lot of it's for the field, like key cult number 2, it looks very clean, but it's also kind of boring. like aesthetically. Like it's like it is a box. It has a backside. There's nothing, you know, it's got a tiny logo on the backside or on the back top, but like aesthetically, it's kind of just a box. But the glory of it is the fact that it's been QC'd to absolute hell, and that the design, everything that makes that board amazing is on the inside.
Yeah.
And it was just nice to see them do something that really catches your eye.
Something interesting that also like popped up not too long ago, but I'm still on the fence about is the Serenity board. So it's like a 65% that had a knob and and instead of the nav row, it had like a LCD, no OLED. Um, it was an interesting take. My concerns is that one, uh, it has to be re-engineered because basically the bezels were just off. Like they had to like fix it, and I'm in the Discord where they're actively talking through the changes they're doing. My bigger concern is that while knobs are interesting, they have very limited functionality.
Yep.
OLEDs even less. I have a Satisfaction 75. It's a decent board, but the knobs and OLED have very minimal functionality, and I don't think it's worth it right now. I know that Ergo boards have knobs and OLEDs, and they have different functionality, and what they can do with it is much different than what full side boards do with currently. So I think we can't compare the two. But seeing what the Satisfaction 75 has done in the last 6 months now has been very minimal. I don't think that it's worth it. I remember talking to Nathan Alpha.
Nathan Alpha Man.
Exactly, about the Evolve and the changes that he did to it. That the knob has become a joystick. That seems a bit interesting. I'm still on the side of erring on. I don't completely see the full functionality of that, and my also concern is that when it's rendered, the knob is flush with the caps, and that's not real life. You can do it. It's much harder if you can do like a breakout PCB and then basically screw that piece of the PCB down onto the bottom case so it can be flush. But that's complexity that you want to add, and it's not very elegant.
So, Mr. Petrov asks, for the three of us, how do you feel about matching separate numpads? Like when a keyboard has like a TKL, has a numpad that matches it.
Don't have any external numpads. No, I lie. I have an M10B that I have never used. But other than that, I don't think that I would have a numpad. It's not for me. If I want a board that has a numpad, I'll buy a board with a numpad built in. Other than that, it's not for me.
I think it's a cool addition. I think it doesn't, obviously it's one of those things that like it doesn't hurt anyone by offering it because it's completely separate. You're not like costing anyone in the group buy or who wants it anything extra by doing it. The one that I wish I had was a matching one for my Orange 75, not because I would use it a ton, but more just because I want to have like the full set. Or of like the completionist theory.
Yeah.
Than the actual usage of it. And also it would be nice to have it like at work because sometimes I need having a 10 key is a little bit easier to use than just the regular number row.
Yeah. I honestly, my opinion is skewed. I don't like the other extra cable that you have to fucking deal with. Like, that literally is it. Like, I don't, I already, it kind of what Starstone says. I have my get shit done board. I have my Austin. It's got a numpad. If I need to use, if I know I'm going to be doing a lot of work with numbers, I will walk over and grab the Austin and take it over here and put it on my desk. I think it's cool, and like Osiris said, it doesn't hurt anybody. Go for it. Like, I'm personally not going to buy it. You're probably not going to have nearly as many people buying it as the actual board itself, but it's cool that that's offered, because I know there are a lot of people that go, well, I'm an accountant, or I, do XYZ at work, so I have to have a numpad, and this is great. And I'm like, offer it as much as you can. Just know that, there are a lot of people like me. They're just, it's not for me. So I need to get shit done board. They're worth it, man.
I heard that there might be a Sci-Fi round 3.
Don't tell me
Really?
that.
Not soon, but they'll come.
That was some helpful words for Chewy, because the not soon portion helps him out a little bit, and for it a little bit more.
Tend another handful of secret boards that I can't really talk about right now, but Squid 60's coming up. Like, it's a busy time.
Busy time. The other thing that I was going to say about separate numpads, like how Chewy was talking about the cable, one thing that'd be cool is if you're going to offer it, do like what the Godspeed 75, where it's got like the hub in it, to where you could just attach it to the actual keyboard and just use like a little short, like 7-inch USB cable. And then you don't have to worry about another cable all the way back to the computer.
Yeah. It'd be, I think the other option, like, I'm thinking, I always forget the name of the board that ran recently, that Eric, you always said had the really cool back, but none of the renders showed the back.
Oh, the Luna.
I think that'd be cool. Like, if you had one that kind of fit right in, and then you could have like another, like an F-row pad fit in. Like, do you remember that keyboard that had like the detachable F-row and detachable?
I've
Like,
never seen that.
I would never get one, because I'm like, that just seems silly. Just get a 10. Just at the end of the day, just buy a 60% or buy a TKL. But it's cool that exists. That is for somebody.
I don't know if it succeeded on drop, so
Personally,
I've
don't
seen that
remember.
on like Z Frontier, so I'm pretty sure that it got made.
Dude, Z Frontier is another one. They're like originative. They kind of operate in their own like little world, and they just like throw things up, and it just kind of happens.
Yeah, the English version of like Z Frontier shows like maybe 5% of what's happening in mainland China. Like Z Frontier forums is like their our geek hack. Basically, anything and everything's just posted there. And then once you get into like the QQ forums, then that's way crazier.
VPN, so I can go look at all these things and try to translate it.
I remember trying to keep up with like the new TX stuff, because he's got like a blog.
Yeah.
And I don't even follow it anymore, because I was honestly just really disappointed with the TX60 V2. But I remember having to like wait, and then I'm like, this is Google Translate. Like, you do wonders sometimes, but you had a real hard time with this one.
Yeah, like I think I tried to stay up to date with the Matrix, a couple of the Matrix boards, and I'm like, I can't even try. Like, I can't even. It's just so hard.
Really hard. Yeah. People are still waiting for the Noah like rest of the world like drop.
Dude, I know, me too. The Noah is such a cool looking board. That's a company that does some really cool stuff that's like very different, very unique in the way that their designs are done.
Yes.
But it sucks that it's not available. It sucks that they're not like, here, Americans, here, rest of world, buy our things.
You don't need
Yeah, they
to.
don't need to.
Like Matrix is such a huge brand in China alone. So is like Fox Labs. I'm surprised they opened like their group rights out to the rest of the world, just because they sell so much more just in mainland China.
You know what Fox Lab needs to do is they need to remake some of their damn PCBs and sell them, so I can buy like 7 Orange 75 PCBs.
That's why I didn't get in on the Leaf 60.
The Leaf 60 PCB was decent. I also heard that the Key 65's PCB, some of them had issues.
It wasn't about the PCB being bad. It's about, I don't want to have to buy a 60% board and not, like, literally the Leaf 60 and the Polaris, those two boards I did not get in on, because at the end of the day I was like, I have to stay strong on my firm stance against non-universal 60% PCBs. And while I understand like literally the one company I would say okay with is like Keycore. But it's also easier to get those PCBs. They make them. It's not like a one and done, you're fucked now forever if it gets screwed up.
There's a very big difference between supporting Fox Labs, which is a completely like Asian company that and Center is still part of the community, but still, mainland China, compared to AIO3, which has, very ingrained into the American community.
Yeah, and it's nothing again. You do you with design. Like if your PCB needs to be a certain way, that's great. I try and limit myself, and it helps my wallet when it comes to like, well, do you want to spend a lot of money on this? Because then it's like that's a lot of added extra cost of like I'm going to be buying something that in theory, the idea of buying this is I never am going to have to use this. The goal is to never have to use this, but I just didn't like that idea of like, I mean, I just like left mounted USBs anyway. So
More daughter boards. That's all I'm saying. More daughter.
I mean, the reason that the community has used a lot of the daughter boards recently is because AIO3 open source is design.
It just helps. It just makes it easier. I mean, I know you add more points of failure with the fact that you have like the JST cable, the connectors, and then the daughter board could fail. But it's like, it's just so much easier to swap things in and out. And it's just like, it makes it to where a keyboard that would have been a more, kind of one and done PCB doesn't have to be. You can do center mounted USB and also support something that's like that has that connector. Always buy more than one PCB if you think you're going to want to rebuild your board. And there's nothing worse than having like a row go out because you accidentally pulled some pads.
Yep.
It happens.
It'd be like that sometimes. It'd be like that. So, guys, if you have any questions for the three of us, please just add Mex on Deck in the chat and we will answer them to the best of our abilities. But I'm going to do a quick sponsor roll. So you can go to switchmod.net/mexondeck to pick up GMK Frostwitch, still running for the next couple of days. So be sure to get in on that before the end of the week, I believe, the 25th. So just a couple more days on that. Be sure to go pick that up, as well as stabs, or not stabs, but lube and springs and all that good stuff. And the code works for the lube and springs with a 4% off. Be sure to check that out. Dixie Mech, you can go to mexondeck.dixiemech.com. Pick up GMK Redacted. Great set, as well as Moto Round 2 coming up next month. mexondeck.project.link for project keyboard. Go pick up GMK Masterpiece. If those if those non-sub legends but non-English legends are right for you, then go pick it up. candykeys.com/mexondeck. Pick up GMK Deep Navy as well. I saw there's another set that's running on, and I was like, shit, I have not been saying this. Or nope, maybe I was thinking of something else. But no, GMK Deep Navy is going on right now, so be sure to check that out, as well as some of our awesome partners, TypeBeast,
the man himself,
one of our amazing partners. Zap Cables, he makes the best cables in the biz. At me, I don't even care. Argue with me, because I'm just going to tell you, no, you're wrong. Smith and Rune as well for on those partners. Be sure to keep an eye out for Iron 165 extras. I know Osiris is very keen on his.
Dude, I love it. It looks so good. It feels amazing. They did such a great job. I still can't get over how clean the engraving is on the bottom as well. It's very thin, which is really hard to do. And have it look as clean as it is and consistent as it is. But yeah, Iron is a fantastic board. I don't foresee it leaving my desk for a little while. We do have some questions for you, Mr. Starstone. Some people are asking, what are those 3 boards that are behind you?
Okay, so it's the JO1, the Kepler, and the number 1 revision one.
Those stands are putting in work. That's like 22 pounds on those two keyboards in the back alone.
It's like 30 pounds of keyboard.
I mean, they've been there for months, so it's working.
Shout out to the stand maker.
I know, the real MVPs.
Let's see. That's a nice TV stand. I love it. Did you guys see my shitty video of the OSA mount mod? I believe that was adding flex to an OSA to a top mount brass plate. I saw it. I'm just not a flex person, but it was impressive.
I haven't seen it. Like, I like variety. I have a lot of boards for that reason, but no, I haven't. I have one Alice style board and it's a Lubricante, and it's okay. It's not a great ergo board. The layout isn't the best, and the second B is a meme.
There you go.
It's like with me, with my people were asking to do the side by side between the Iron 165 and the Bauer. And I'm like, well, they're completely different because I got the Bauer with a palm plate with linear switches, and then this is a brass plate with the most tactile switches you can really get right now. So kind of
it'd be like, it's like the people were asking, oh, compare the Austins. I was like, it's a Holy Panda versus a Cream. They're going to sound completely different. Like, and the Austin already, like, he tweaked some things, but nothing that he really tweaked made a vast difference. Like, you already did a really good job on round 1, and all you did was kind of streamline a couple other things and made it just tweaked it to make it a little bit better, which I'm like, I appreciate, but that doesn't make this one 10 times better. It just makes it a little bit more user friendly. And and hell, it worked out. He sold out in under a minute. So
Input Admiral asked, did you see how Project Keyboard matched the color of GMK Bingsu? It looks like he used a tool that measured the wavelength of the samples. Yes, I did, and he did that with community member Nebulant. Nebulant does like color work for like his job, so he's very good at that. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited for Bingsu because that's what's going to go on this Plum iron when I do get it. Yeah, I think it's awesome that he did that.
I remember when 159 got the samples for round 2, and they did this electrospectrometer or color, whatever. It was amazing because we've never seen that before in the community. It's like actual color science. It's like, hey, this is what I thought, and this is what you're going to get. And GMK said this is what it is, and they scienced the hell out of a sample, and they're like, nope, it's not right. Do it again.
I just love because I want to see the people that are like, this Bingsu doesn't match, and he and then for 159 I just go, well, science says you're wrong.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah, it's the first use of it in the community. I think that going forward, like, vendors should utilize the knowledge that Nebulant has.
Side Up asks, can someone recommend me a lubing station? Those are a little tricky to find. I know Clavier has a decent one, but those can be hard to purchase. I know One Up Keyboards has a good lube station that's from Clavier, but they're still shut down, I believe. But honestly, like there are a lot of people that 3D print in this hobby, and you could probably find someone who is in, and then SM Keyboards does.
Switch Couture. If you want something eccentric or colorful, you can get that. They're located in the US, and they have their own laser they can print out within weeks, I believe.
So lots of different places. And most of them, I mean, I've used a bunch of different ones. I have ones that a friend of mine with a 3D printer made for me. But I've used a lot of them. They're all fine. They all work. Like at the end of the day, does it hold the Switch there so you can lube on it? It does. Cool. Like
Awesome.
that's all you need. So, and yeah, SM Keyboards does make some fire. So, but well, if you guys don't have any more questions, we haven't done a wrap up 2 questions in a hot minute. I feel like
No, it has been a while.
Okay.
The first one we'll go with the classic. What is your favorite and least favorite thing about the community right now?
That's a loaded question.
It is.
it's a very loaded
It's a very
question.
loaded question.
I saw your grin the second you heard it. Like, oh, buddy.
The favorite thing about the hobby that I have that there's variety. There's no one empirical right or wrong answer for anything because everything is objective. There's no subjectivity in the entire hobby because it's what you like. Do you want something that sounds great? Awesome. You want something that looks great? Amazing. Do you want something that feels amazing? That's what you want. And no one can tell you otherwise. They can try, but everyone's going to be wrong because everyone has a different style and what they want to aspire to is different. What I dislike about the hobby currently is that people tend to be entitled for certain things. People think that because they are someone or they've done something in the past that their opinion has more weight because they've been around longer, and because it was done like this in the past it doesn't mean that it can not change in the future. We see this a little bit. We saw this in the past a little bit with hot swap PCBs.
Yep.
People disliked them and they thought they were the worst thing in the world because it brought a lot of newcomers into the hobby, and they're like, if you're not soldering any PCB you shouldn't be part of this hobby. And at the time, there was what, 10, 17 different switches. Now there are almost, I can't even count all the switches that we have currently, and we're not even talking about Franken switches. And if someone wants to try out all these switches, it can be time, because of time constraints. You don't want someone to just desolder, and we don't know how long a board can desolder, and we don't want someone to also like spend hundreds of dollars if they like mess up a PCB several times over. We've seen PCB gore, and I would rather have someone that is new to the hobby understand and find a switch that they like and then learn how to solder than go through
Painstaking
the
bullshit.
exactly of soldering, desoldering, and maybe ripping a trace, frying a PCB, or asking in one of the mech help channels, asking for that, and then being ostracized for burning a pad or whatnot.
Yeah, don't be
I
a
think
dick
that
to people that like everyone's just trying to learn.
Burn a lot of pads. I have ruined many a PCB. I think there's at least 6 DZ60s that I alone have just absolutely destroyed trying to figure out what box switches I liked.
It's one of those things. It's like only because you've been around in the hobby doesn't give you any more stature than someone new in the hobby. Like, I've been in the hobby for a little bit, and I'm always learning from somewhere else. Like, someone can show something new from, I'm going into different parts of the hobby. I'm trying to look more what the Asian community is doing, and I know nothing about it. So if all I hope is I am treated with respect as I am in this hobby currently in the States, right? Where I'm kind of known, but not really, because really I'm nobody. Like, I have a newsletter, I've hung out with a few people, but other than that, like, no one should really know who I am.
Until now.
No, but that's the thing. Like, this is, at the end of the day, this is a hobby, right? We're talking about pieces of metal and plastic. So vendors, of course, they need to make money because that's their livelihood. But for the rest of us, it's just pieces of plastic.
Yep. Absolutely. And the last question, which we have not asked in a hot minute, is The Office or Parks and Rec?
Really hard.
It is.
It's a tough one.
Parks and Rec is a spiritual spin-off of The Office. I'm gonna go with The Office then.
I don't think Parks and Rec has won this entire year.
2020, the year of The Office. Let's go.
It just like it came into pop culture when it was like the height of stuff. I was in college when it was showing off, so we got to see it. It's just nostalgia.
I think it's The Office. I feel like, while I think from a writing, from maybe even in some portions an acting standpoint, Parks and Recreation is a better show. The Office is a cultural icon.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, well, and you think about at the time, people were looking for that great show to fill the giant gap that Friends just left.
Yeah, exactly.
And there wasn't that much. Friends was everything, and then it left this giant hole. And How I Met Your Mother was a show that was very, very popular because it had that same vibe, but The Office did something different. But my another argument that I have about Parks and Rec is Parks and Rec, and it's getting better every single time. That's why I really love Brooklyn Nine-Nine as well. Is the same people are making these shows, learning from the mistakes that they're making from The Office, and then transferring that into going, okay, now that I know what I know, Parks and Rec had a more to me, Parks and Rec had a more finite ending because they looked back on The Office and said, we drug that out too.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason why everyone says Breaking Bad's one of the best TV shows ever, because they were like, we're doing it this long. It's not going to be that long. It's going to be a start to finish story. And people are, well, you can't get mad. Like if you drag it on too long, you can start ruining it. So, but The Office, I mean, it's a classic. Who doesn't like The Office, right?
Yeah,
Because it had highs, it had lows. You were invested in characters. I mean, I know people still look at the Pam and Jim wedding as one of the highlight of the entire series.
Yep.
I mean,
but then you also have April Ludgate.
Yeah. Just amazing. Andy and April, great love story.
Exactly.
It is.
And great love story. Honestly, and this is another thing that I always kind of was upset with, but I understand it happened because of time. I felt like the Michael and Holly love story should have been explored way more. And they had it in the earlier seasons, and season 4, I believe, is when she gets introduced, and then she leaves midway through season 5. But then it's she's back. She broke up with her fiance, and then the next episode, they kind of are in trouble with each other, and then the next episode they're together, and then they're all over each other, and then they're engaged, and then Michael's gone, and it's it just felt very. I'm like, whoever the actress is did a great job playing this female version of Michael, but then also I'm I wanted to see way more of that relationship.
Yeah, I think that it was at the point that Steve Carell was just such a big star and he wanted to do other things.
Yeah. I think it could have naturally ended better if they would have just found a better way to end it a little 2 or 3 seasons earlier. But I think that will always be the biggest, as an Office fan, that will always be my biggest regret for the show, is how it ended, because it just kind of the wheels kind of fell off and it just kind of trotted along until it just died.
Yeah,
and they tried to do the farm, and I think that was the main reason that even season 9 was even a thing, is they were let's see if we can do the farm, and then it didn't work out, and they're fuck, all right, well, let's wrap this shit show up. So, but yeah, I did. I read that recently, Dixie, about how they just didn't renew it. He was willing to keep going, but
Interesting.
Also check out the Office Ladies podcast. It is my current favorite podcast.
It's great that Jenna Fisher and
Angela Kinsey.
Angela Kinsey are doing that, which is amazing.
Fantastic.
Because it's like it's a great behind the scenes of what was happening. Like
Yeah.
they were just talking about like how they had gone to the Emmys and they were like at the satellite party because they weren't big enough, but Steve Carell was because he had just appeared in the 40-year-old version. And you're like, oh damn, like this is insight of like how they were literally just normal people and normal actors, and then all of a sudden it blew up.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but Starstone TypeBeast, thank you very, very much for joining us. Thank you for being flexible with our schedule as
amazing.
well.
Of course.
So, guys, check out the TypeBeast newsletter. Is there in the link. It's a great read. We very much recommend it. And anything you want to plug coming up?
I don't want to be a vendor. I don't want to sell things. My whole thing is like this is a hobby. I think that I might have a perspective some people want to see, and for the time being, people seem to enjoy it. Like I want criticism. If you think that I'm not covering something or whatever, let me know. I want that because the only way this can get better is if people are honest and tell me if something sucks or I should do more something else.
Very nice.
Absolutely.
So, and just a quick shout out, or not shout out, but quick announcement. So, if you haven't seen much of our stuff on YouTube, that is this guy's fault. I just kind of took a week off last week and just didn't really handle any of that kind of back end stuff. Everything will start being released over the next few days. So, all of the stuff will continue to get posted as usual. My apologies on that. And we are going to raid Mr. I Am Me, You Are You.
Awesome. I love that Dixie and 159 are fighting with each other in our chat right now.
No, that's it's just I'm just glad that they're two yachts that are parked next to each other both get Wi-Fi.
It's a battle for which one's going to upgrade to the super yacht first.
Yeah. So excited to see that. But guys, check out just yelled over. Check out I Am Me, You Are You, fantastic keyboard streamer and great friend of the channel. So thank you guys very much. Starstone, thank you. Bye, Switch Test.
I know.